So, when the forces of economic and political modernization of the late 18th century began to take hold in Ireland, the urge to articulate a distinct and competitive national cultural history fueled a discourse on the distinctiveness of Ireland's ancient music. Giraldus's observations became a touchstone for further elaboration, and it's in the late 18th century that we were all started to become obliged to start with Cambrensis' quote about how elaborate and wonderful the harpers were way back when. Works such as Charles O'Connor's Dissertations on the History of Ireland in 1755, Joseph Cooper Walker, Historical Memories of the Irish Bards, 1786, Charlotte Brooks' Relics of Irish Poetry, 1789. These all engineered an Irish identity which had an essential musicality. O'Connor wrote of ancient Irish civilization, quote, all their systems, philosophical, metaphysical, and theological, were conveyed in the harmonious measures of sound and verse. It was O'Connor who elevated the triumvirate of Gantry, Galtry, and Suintry into a peculiarly Irish musical system of emotional expression. This period established a long-standing habit of characterizing relatively recent creativity as ancient and timeless in character. The famous tune Evelyn Aroon is a good example. It's attributed by modern scholarship to the 18th century Clare poet Curvil O'Daly. It's a typical instance of the more complex medieval poetry refigured in popular song meter by the generation of modern Jacobite poets. Yet O'Daly, like his song, was transformed into an ancient figure soon after his death. Joseph Cooper Walker gave an account of the folklore surrounding the man in the song, which places him 2 centuries earlier. And the late 19th century music historian William Grattan Flood places him even further back to the 14th century. Like O'Daly, the harper and composer O'Carolan began to be celebrated as an ancient bard, and his music characterized likewise within a couple of decades of his death in 1738. Contrary to his first hagiographers, Carolan was in reality Ireland's first modern professional musician, composing in styles as eclectic and varied as his patrons, spanning religious and class differences. He was, in the assessment of Frank Harrison, quote, a master operator in an assortment of musical dialects, while still being seen as an arch representative of the peripatetic harper. Carolan and O'Daly were both operating in the gloaming just before the dawn of Irish modernity in a very progressive way. The age of revolution, which then dawned, was the age of the invention of traditional music. And I don't place the word invention in scare quotes here. The songs and their melodies produced within the 18th century Jacobite culture were incorporated into a greatly expanding corpus of music invented by imaginative pipers and balladeers in both English and Irish in the following generations. And the invention and refinement of the Irish pipes, much later called the uilleann pipes, the importation from Scotland of the real dance form and the adaptation of its fiddle techniques by Irish players, the invention of a characteristically Irish steps and gestures by itinerant dancing masters. These are the significant developments of the revolutionary period. If we are searching for Irish musical uniqueness, then we should look closely at this crucially formative period characterized by importation, incorporation, and development of various European forms, gestures, and instruments. At the heart of these developments was the musical and social ascendancy of the Irish pipes and the pipers. They inherited the repertoire and the social function of the harpers, who operated in close contact with dancing masters, singers in Irish and English, and fiddle players with Scottish tunes and techniques. On the eve of the Great Famine, George Petrie and James Goodman were collecting tunes almost exclusively from pipers. It is only after their repertoire began to be published in the late 18th century that we have a clear and distinctly identified Irish style of dance music recognized today by session players across the globe. And it all begins with a publisher named John Lee. And John Lee published an advertisement in the Hibernian Journal in Dublin in March of 1780, and the first thing he advertised was, the following to this day is published: a collection of favorite Irish tunes composed by William Jackson, Esquire, author of the celebrated dance, The Morning Brush. Price, 1 shilling, 7 pence. Now, there wasn't much before Lee in 1780. Jackson celebrated Irish tunes by Walter Jackson. 200 favorite dance tunes by John Johnson both appeared in 1765. In 1778, then, Lee published a favorite collection of the so much admired old Irish tunes, the original compositions of Carolyn, the Irish bard, set for harpsichord, violin, and German flute. Lee's publications complemented the standard Carolyn repertoire with, for the first time, tunes composed and performed by an Irish piper on an indigenous Irish instrument in settings that closely resemble the settings still current in the 20th century. These publications show pipers reinterpreting the international country dance repertoire for their instrument, and as a result, a distinctively Irish instrumental style can be, for the first time, discerned. So Fleischmann, the indefatigable compiler of 18th century sources upon whom we all rely, was in sympathy with the thesis articulated here, namely that the Irish idiom was a modern one, which was first identifiable in the 18th century. The most prominent tune types collected by Fleischmann, those associated with the Irish tradition, reels, double jigs, hornpipes, and harp tunes, are almost entirely missing from the Playford editions of the earlier period. When combing foreign manuscripts and published sources of the 17th and the 18th century, he was looking for material which resembled or duplicated this late 18th century Irish idiom. And here, let me finish this little passage with a quote from Fleischmann, because I think he was right. He says, "When we describe a tune as distinctively Irish, we are judging it by criteria derived from the idiom which crystallized in the 18th century." This is Fleischmann telling his readers how did they decide what to include from early in the 18th and the 17th century. The tunes which, with Irish titles dated prior to 1700 are quite unlike those of the preceding century, and too few tunes have as yet been assembled to allow new stylistic criteria to be established. Even in the case of Irish titles, one has to distinguish between titles which clearly indicate that the style is an Irish one, e.g. the Irish dump, the Irish jig, or the Irish trot, and the anglicizations of titles in the Irish language, such as Éamon na Crick or Hugger Marhain. So I associate this turning point with the invention and perfection of the Irish union pipes, the bellows blown and closed chanter variant of an instrument used throughout the Western world. So let me finish this little section with a quote of an advertisement of a famous maker of pipes, a number of them still in the hands of pipers today, named Kenna. In 1810, he was advertising himself in these terms, and this is in the Freeman's Journal, March 1812. A typo. "Kenna from Mullingar, grand union pipes maker, respectfully acquaints the lovers of that ancient national instrument," less than a century old, "that he at present lives at number 1 Essex Quay, Dublin, where they can be gratified with his so very favourite instrument in its most improved and perfect state. He having by great application and study brought it to a degree of perfection heretofore unknown in Ireland, being equal if not superior in tone to the best London pianos. Gives instructions to perform on this instrument. Note well, organs repaired, voiced, and tuned in perfect masterly manner, pianofortes, etc., musical instruments of every description on order." That's the Irish pipes in 1812, the essence of the modern tradition, I argue, in a section. So, Robbie, will you give us an example or two of this
Have a go.
business?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm going to play a couple of tunes from, you mentioned Goodman there. These are two tunes that Goodman collected. Goodman was a Church of Ireland minister who was born in 1828 near Dingle in County Kerry. He was a fluent Irish speaker, sang the songs of the districts, played the flute in his youth and took up the pipes later on. Made his collection between 1860 and 1866 when he was serving as a clergyman in Ardgroom. And he later became Professor of Irish in Trinity College. And his big thing in life was traditional music, and the pipes in particular. Apparently a very benevolent man. Used to look after itinerant pipers who would come, look after them, their bodily needs, and indeed look after their reed needs as well, and kit them out. So these are two tunes from his collection. The tunes are called The Drunken Gauger and Trim the Velvet, and they bear no relation whatsoever to two well-known tunes
with the same names
whatsoever.
It's been wonderful to have access to the Goodman manuscripts of these publications.
Oh yeah, it's a wonderful thing to have. I must say, when they came out initially, I was involved in other musical ventures and I didn't really take much notice of them due to musical other things. But over the past year, I've been dipping into them, and it's sort of every night you go back and you go through what does Goodman have, you know. There's some real absolute gems in it, you know. And its purpose in putting the collection together was to he saw that the whole tradition was dying out at that stage in his own native province of Munster. And actually O'Malley here, who lived just around the corner of Rugby Avenue, lived in Cork for a while, and he had heard Goodman play and he regarded him as the best piper in the province of Munster. But Goodman's reason for putting the collection together was so that if in years to come the pipes underwent a revival, there would be a body of music there for people who could utilise, and that was his main reason for doing it.
Yes, well thankfully he did.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it took us a while, but we're back in business.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. We are going to have a break, but would you see us out and
break
with another set of tunes? And
absolutely, yeah. Good fun. Yeah, good.